what you can't explain. It's coming back again. I can see it now, I can see it now. What you can't explain, coming back again.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another Coffee and Crime Time. Now this does happen to be a two-part Coffee and Crime Time because there was just so much information in this case, but let me give you a quick summary of what we talked about in part 1, and you will also find the link to that video, part 1, in the description box. You should watch that first if you haven't, because 1 always comes before 2, even in 2025, when I think we have definitely jumped timelines and no one knows what the hell is going on. So, Lauren Dumolo was a 29-year-old single mother of a 5-year-old daughter, originally from Long Island but living in Cape Coral, Florida, where several of her family members also lived. Lauren's mother and the mother's longtime boyfriend lived about a 6-minute walk from Lauren's apartment. Lauren's brother and 2 of her sisters also lived close by, and even though Lauren's father, Paul, lived in California, he and Lauren were very close and spoke regularly. Now, Lauren had struggled with substance abuse since a car accident in her teens. She'd lost custody of her daughter, Michaela, because of these issues, but by 2020, Lauren had been clean for 2 years and was working on getting custody of her child back. In the spring of 2020, Lauren was Baker acted twice due to some odd behavior and some mental health concerns. And then in June of 2020, very shortly after she was released from her second Baker Act hold, Lauren Dumolo vanished. The last person to see her was allegedly her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Gabriel Pena, who didn't report her missing for several days. Now, there's obviously so much more detail and context that this quick summary is missing. You should definitely watch part 1, but I just wanted to bring your brain and mine back to Lauren and her story before diving into the rest of the case. But before we do dive in, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. Get mouth-watering, seasonal recipes and fresh, pre-measured ingredients delivered right to your door with HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Now, you would think that with the holidays over, things would be less stressful, less busy, but that just never seems to be the case, especially when it comes to mealtime. I hate going out to the grocery store in these sub-zero temperatures, constant snow falling, no sign of the sun. It is just depressing and takes all the fun out of cooking and food. And that is where HelloFresh comes in clutch, saving you from the search for recipes or all that grocery store shopping. You just have to pick your meals and everything you need is delivered right to your door. Not only does every HelloFresh recipe include high-quality, sustainably sourced ingredients like produce that comes fresh from the farm, but there is always something for everyone to enjoy on their weekly menu. With 50 chef-crafted recipes to choose from each week, plus customizable options to make your meals the way you like them, you can create restaurant-quality meals from the comfort of your own home and please every person in your family. Each recipe is going to come with pre-portioned ingredients. They're going to give you only and exactly what you need to make each meal, so there's no food waste, which is big for me. So you're going to get little packets of sour cream. You don't have to buy a big jug of sour cream. You're going to get 2 tomatoes. You don't have to buy a whole bushel of tomatoes. You're going to get exactly what you need, fresh herbs, things like that. Everything is there for you, and every recipe comes with a recipe card. It's going to lead you through the cooking process with step-by-step instructions and pictures, so it's literally impossible to mess up. Additionally, the HelloFresh market does not get the credit it deserves. I don't think enough people talk about it. You can add over 100 items to your weekly box, like quick breakfasts, packable snacks, which is going to make putting together your kids' lunches easy, and they're going to love you for it because it's going to be more fun, more, switching it up. More things that they've never had in their lunch before instead of the same peanut butter and jelly and like Oreo cookies and carrot sticks. They also have beverages, they've got desserts, charcuterie boards, foods, and more. And the meals come to you on your schedule. So if you're traveling, you can skip a week. If you have family or friends in visiting, you can add more protein and ingredients to modify the recipes to serve more people. I personally have been cooking with HelloFresh since 2020, and it has made mealtime in the Harlowe household so much easier and so much more enjoyable. I especially love when everyone gets in on the fun of cooking, and I do love to see how much they enjoy eating the food, which I know not only tastes good, but is good for them because this is high quality protein, high quality produce. It's very good. So, and I will say that having the recipe card there as well makes it so that you don't have to really think too much and you can let your kids get in on the fun because, like I said, it's all laid out for you step by step and you don't have to think too much about what you're doing and focus too much on cooking. You can let your kids and your family get in on the fun. Right now, you can get up to 10 free meals and free shipping on your first box at HelloFresh.com when you use code stephanieharlowe 10FM. Free meals applied as a discount on first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan, but one more time, that's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals and free shipping. Just go to HelloFresh.com and use code stephanieharlowe 10FM. And there's an E on the end of Stephanie and Harlowe. You can find the link in the description box as well. Thank you so much to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. So it is still up for debate, at least in my mind, whether Lauren went missing in the evening of June 18th, 2020, or in the morning of June 19th, 2020. No one had talked to or heard from Lauren after around 7 p.m. on the evening of the 18th. Lauren had been released from a psychiatric facility earlier that morning. She'd spent the morning and afternoon applying for jobs because she had previously worked 2 jobs, but she'd lost one due to the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdowns, and she lost the other job after she was Baker acted twice and was unable to work during that time. Now, Lauren did talk to her sister Cassie on the phone at 6:30 p.m. that day, the 18th. They talked about Lauren's concern about finding another job, and Cassie offered to help Lauren in any way she could, and the two agreed to speak the following day so that they could come up with a plan of action together. Lauren's boyfriend Gabriel said he last saw Lauren on the morning of the 19th as he was leaving for work around 6:30 a.m. He said she was still sleeping when he kissed her and said goodbye. Allegedly, and reportedly, a local maintenance man who worked at several apartment complexes in that area saw Lauren that morning around 8:30 a.m., headed back to her apartment after her routine morning walk to nearby Four Freedoms Park, where she would go every day to meditate and center herself. Now, between 10 and 11 a.m. on June 19th, Lauren, or someone using her cell phone, made a Facebook call to Gabriel Pena's phone, but that call was not answered. Now, here is something you need to know about Lauren and her phone. The phone she was using at the time of her disappearance was fairly new. She'd only been using it since about June 8th or 9th, because if you remember from part 1, Lauren had been Baker acted for the first time on June 1st, when some bystanders at Four Freedoms Park had called the police after Lauren jumped into the water, Bimini Basin, swam from one side to the other, and started talking about people being after her and aliens and things like that. When she went into the water that day, Lauren's cell phone had been on her person somehow, whether she had it in her hand or it was in her pocket, and that cell phone was never recovered. It must have fallen into the water when she was in there, and that was that. So she got a new phone when she was released, but there was no cell phone plan on this phone. She used it only on Wi-Fi to chat with people over messaging apps using social media, etc. Basically, Lauren could do everything with that phone besides make traditional calls or send traditional texts. As long as she had Wi-Fi, she could still message and call over apps like Facebook Messenger. Now remember that when Gabriel Pena filed a missing persons report on Lauren on June 21st, he said that he had been calling her, but she wasn't answering her phone. 2 days after he filed this missing persons report on June 23rd, Lauren's sisters, Cassie and Lindsay, along with Lindsay's boyfriend Matt, went to Cape Coral to see what was going on for themselves, and they were able to get the spare keys to Lauren's apartment from Lauren's mother, Anne, and they entered the apartment to see if there were any clues about where Lauren could have been. Inside the apartment, nothing was really out of the ordinary or out of place, which was kind of the problem. If Lauren had left, if she had been trying to go missing, if she'd voluntarily kind of just took off from her apartment, you would think that she would have packed a bag or taken some of her belongings. But everything was there. Lauren's clothes, her makeup, her personal items, pictures of her daughter, things like that. They were all there. Next to Lauren's bed, they also found a cell phone, which was turned off, as in it was powered down and they couldn't get it to power back up. So as Cassie, Lindsay, and Matt looked through the apartment, Gabriel Pena showed up. He was there to get his television. And they showed Gabriel the phone that they'd found by the bed, and they asked him, whose phone is this? Is it Lauren's phone? Do you know anything about this phone? And according to Lauren's sisters, Gabriel took the phone, he walked away, and then he walked back in with another phone, but this phone was turned on, and it did belong to Lauren. Not only was that phone logged into Lauren's social media and email accounts, but it was logged into Gabriel's social media and email accounts, according to Lauren's sisters. And Lauren's sisters believed that Gabriel had either had Lauren's phone the whole time, or he knew exactly where it was located in the apartment, because they hand him this phone that's turned off and they couldn't get it to turn back on, right? I don't know if it was dead or if it was just broken. They couldn't get it to turn back on. And they're like, is this Lauren's phone? He leaves the room, comes back within a minute or so with another phone that is turned on, powered up, working, and it does belong to Lauren. It was the one she had been using since about June 8th or 9th. So where did he get the phone from? Did he have it on his person? Was he leaving the apartment with it? Or was it located somewhere in the apartment and he just knew exactly where to go to get it? Either way, the Cape Coral police were called to perform a wellness check on Lauren, and when they arrived, they, kind of checked around and made sure everything was okay. They talked to Cassie, Lindsay, and Matt, and Cassie would end up giving law enforcement both phones, the one that they found by the bed that wouldn't turn on and the one that Gabriel Pena had given them, so that these phones could be analyzed for evidence. On June 24th, the Cape Coral Police Department finally released a missing endangered person alert at 1:25 p.m., and Detective Nick Jones was officially assigned to Lauren's case. This was 140 hours after Lauren had last made contact with anyone, 120 hours after she was allegedly seen by someone, and 72 hours after she had been reported missing. That damn clerical error. But if someone was going to find Lauren, Detective Nick Jones was the guy who could do it. Since Lauren's missing persons report was filed until a year later, in June of 2021, 43 other missing and endangered cases had popped up in the Cape Coral area, and all 43 had been solved. These people had been found, or they had figured out what happened to them, and Detective Jones would tell the media that he had never not solved a missing persons case. But apparently Lauren Dumolo would break his perfect solve rate. Now that the police were officially on the case, Lauren's family could start doing their own part in bringing her home. So Lauren's father, Paul, traveled from California to Florida so that he could participate in this search and in this, raising awareness for Lauren. And he, along with Lauren's sisters, they kind of began going through the same routine every single day, searching for Lauren, handing out flyers in places that Lauren would go to and spend time talking to people to see if anybody had seen her or if anybody knew where she was. Basically, what happened is every day they would start at Lauren's apartment, and then they would walk or drive to Four Freedoms Park. They would talk to people and pass out missing persons posters as they went. They would then walk around the park, scour the park. They would talk to people. They would hand out posters. They would put posters up. Then they would walk around the town of Cape Coral, going to bus stops that Lauren used, stopping at stores and businesses that Lauren would go to, once again talking to people and raising awareness about Lauren's missing status. Now, people at these locations knew Lauren, but they said they hadn't seen her in days. They also went to Lauren's job, where they had discovered she didn't pick up her last paycheck. They did this same routine for a few days, and on the morning of June 27th, they set out to do it again. When they arrived at Four Freedoms Park that day, they saw that police were there, and they had divers in the water looking for Lauren. Detective Nick Jones was also there and spoke to Lauren's father and sisters, and he told them something shocking. He said that on Saturday, June 20th, a week before this, Lauren's purse and shoes had been found in Four Freedoms Park by someone walking by, and the items had been turned in to the police. Now, this was the day before Lauren was reported missing and 4 days before a detective was assigned to her case. So how did my question would be, how did they kind of connect these things? Like, they got this stuff turned into the police station before they even knew who Lauren Dumolo was. How long did it take for the police to put together that the items found in the park were connected to this missing persons case? And also, what I think is a little strange is that in Lauren's purse, everything was there, besides her cell phone. Like, her wallet was in there with her identification, credit cards, things like that. Wouldn't they have tried to reach out to her or show up to her apartment or contact her to say, hey, somebody found your purse and your shoes in the park, would you like to collect it? Because at that point, the police wouldn't have known that she was missing. Did that ever happen, or did the police just kind of put these things to the side, and then Lauren was reported missing, and they put two and two together? I'm not sure, but nothing turned up during the search of Bimini Basin, which is the body of water in Four Freedoms Park. And this basically meant that Lauren, or her body, was not found in the water. But according to some members of Lauren's family, they believe the purse and the shoes had been possibly planted by someone. They don't believe that Lauren left those things there. Like I said, everything was in her purse, her wallet, the keys to her apartment, her identification, everything except her phone, which, as we now know, was either in her apartment or with Gabriel Pena. So what we are supposed to believe here is if Lauren left of her own free will, she left without her purse, without her money, without her identification, and without her phone, which is her lifeline. It's all of our lifelines. Why would she leave her apartment without those things? And this was the same purse that Lauren was seen using on surveillance when she was applying for jobs around Cape Coral on June 18th. Now, let's give Gabriel Pena the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe he didn't have the phone in his possession. Maybe he just knew where it was in Lauren's apartment. And if that's the case, I still have questions. Like, why, when you filed the missing persons report, did you tell the police that you had been calling Lauren and she wasn't answering? Why didn't you tell them in that missing persons report that she'd left her phone in the apartment? That's something important, right? Especially when you're reporting somebody missing and you want the police to understand this person didn't just run away. She left her phone in the apartment. This is something the police would need to know. And if you were calling her phone while you were living in her apartment after she went missing, would you not have heard the phone ringing or vibrating in the apartment? Therefore, you would know she didn't have it. And wouldn't that on its own be concerning? Why did Gabriel tell nobody that Lauren had left her phone in the apartment? And it's not like maybe you could say, oh, it's dead. So when he was calling, it wasn't ringing. But it wasn't dead when he handed it to Lauren's sisters. So did he charge it? I don't know. People do not go anywhere without their cell phones, and it was Lauren's only means of contact with the outside world. Additionally, Lauren's Aunt Sue, who is Lauren's mother's sister, had questioned Lauren's mother's boyfriend, Victor, about the day that Lauren's purse and shoes were found in the park, which would have been June 20th. Remember, Lauren's mother and her boyfriend, Victor, lived on Tarpon Court, directly across the street from Four Freedoms Park. According to Aunt Sue, Victor had told her that on June 20th, which was a Saturday, he had been planning to pick Gabriel up for work, as he usually did. The two were partners in this flooring company, and they drove the same work van into work or to their job site every morning. But on that Saturday, June 20th, Victor said he left his apartment, he went to get into the work van, and he saw Gabriel walking towards the apartment from the direction of Four Freedoms Park. And Victor asked Gabriel what he was doing, and allegedly Gabriel said he was looking for Lauren in the park. And so this is when Victor first found out that Lauren had not come home the day before, June 19th. Even more odd was what Lauren's family members found 5 days later in Four Freedoms Park. It was July 2nd, and Cassie, Lindsay, and Matt were going through their normal daily routine again, starting at Lauren's apartment, walking to the park or driving to the park, walking around Cape Coral, etc. That morning when they got to the park, they said they walked around the entire perimeter. They looked high, they looked low, they looked in bushes, they looked under picnic tables. But as usual, they found nothing. They then left the park and spent a few hours handing out flyers and talking to people before returning to Four Freedoms Park where they had left their car. Before leaving for the day, they decided to take one more stroll around the park, and that's when they saw it, a burgundy shirt laying in the sand. Matt said the shirt was right there, clear as day. And Lauren's sister Cassie said, quote, "At the edge of the park, there's this tree that overhangs, and there's like a dock that has a space between it, and I wanted to look there. Matt and Lindsay were behind me, and at that point, Matt goes, 'What's that?' And Lindsay starts running. We both started running," end quote. Cassie, Lindsay, and Matt swore that the shirt, which was Lauren's shirt, had not been there earlier in the day when they'd searched the park, nor had it been there any of the other days they had searched the park. And Cape Coral police had also searched the park for clues. We know they were just there, about a week prior, doing a dive right around the water area, which is where the shirt was found. And the police hadn't seen the shirt either. The shirt wasn't buried in the sand, it was just lying on top. It wasn't wet, it wasn't dirty, and the trio felt there was no way it had been there since Lauren had gone missing 2 weeks prior. And this does appear to be the same shirt that Lauren was seen wearing on surveillance on June 18th when she'd been applying for jobs. Additionally, like I said, the purse that was found in the park on the 20th was the same purse she was seen carrying that day. The police were then called to the park to pick up the shirt and put it into evidence. And Detective Jones with a forensics team were on site within 10 minutes. They also searched the area again to see if anything else had been missed. Now, Lindsay's boyfriend Matt pointed out to the police that there was a security camera on a public building that was facing basically directly at the spot where that shirt had been found. And detectives promised that they would pull the footage and see what they could find in it. Because once again, Lauren's family believed, and still does believe, that that shirt was planted at Four Freedoms Park. And it's possibly because whoever had done whatever they had done to Lauren knew that the cops were looking. They were searching Bimini Basin. It's a pretty public park. It's right on main streets, so you can just walk by and see that there's a police presence there. So maybe they were trying to sort of make the police feel that they were on the right path by searching Bimini Basin and Four Freedoms Park. And the whole idea with Lauren's family was they said, if you can pull the surveillance footage, you can see if somebody's walking by and dropping this shirt, or who basically was in the area at the time that the shirt was left there, because they said absolutely not. It had not been there earlier that day or earlier in the week at all. So the cops did pull the surveillance camera footage, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, so just bear with me. Put a pin in it. So on July 7th, more than 24 people searched. So on July 7th, more than 24 people gathered at Four Freedoms Park to search for Lauren there and near her apartment.
Southwest Florida Helping Hands coordinated today's search efforts, dividing people to search surrounding locations where Dumolo was last seen on June 19th.
It's been 2 weeks. People are forgetting already, and we want to keep her picture in their face.
They have been knocking on doors, posting flyers, searching for any clues to bring Lauren home.
The way that cases like this are going to be resolved is because people talk, and the more they talk, the more information we find out.
Police say she was last seen at her Cape Coral apartment, where they also found her phone. That same day, her purse was found at Four Freedoms Park. The community now desperate for answers.
Something will trigger a memory, even if it's small, and that little piece of information is just part of the big puzzle.
Last week, the family found a shirt at Four Freedoms Park that they believe belongs to Lauren.
If this was my daughter, I would want someone to help.
Dumolo's sister keeping hope alive, thankful to see the outpouring of community support.
Just, people from the community are coming out and reaching out and donating their time and volunteering their time to us, and I'm just so grateful for it.
Missing from those who gathered that day to raise awareness about Lauren were Lauren's mother, Anne, Lauren's mother's boyfriend, Victor, who, remember, they both lived right across the street from the park, and Gabriel Pena, who had allegedly been conducting his own searches for his missing girlfriend, so he didn't feel the need to participate in any public searches, allegedly and reportedly. Now, the people helping do the search, they did go door to door in the area, once again, handing out flyers, asking people if they had seen Lauren. And of course, some of these volunteers ended up across the street at the apartment of Lauren's mother and Victor, because they live right across from Four Freedoms Park. So when this woman, this volunteer, first knocked on the door, she said that Victor answered. And this woman at that time didn't know who he was, but she was like, hey, I'm here, to ask questions about Lauren Dumolo. Have you seen her? Do you know this girl? And he explained to her that he was Lauren's stepfather. And he said that Lauren's mother, Ann, was in a wheelchair, and that's why they were not participating in the search. But you could have still made your way across the park, right? And showed your face, because before they go on this search, they're all meeting at Four Freedoms Park. They're going to settle on a plan of action. They're going to introduce all the volunteers. Lauren's mother and Victor could have gotten their asses up, gotten across the street, and been there for that, to at least show their support, to at least show their presence, to at least show that they were there. But they didn't, right? And remember that Lauren's mother, who we've been calling Ann, but that's not her real name, she had struggled with alcoholism for much of her life, and she was in a wheelchair. But according to Lauren's actual biological father, Paul Dumolo, this was not because she was disabled in any way, it was by choice. Paul and others in Lauren's family have asserted that Victor enabled Ann's drinking. He didn't really discourage her from it. He would provide her with alcohol. And because she was basically drunk all the time, and because when she would drink and be drunk, Ann would fall and hurt herself, I guess she just decided to use a wheelchair. Paul basically makes it seem like Ann just kind of accepted her fate. She didn't have a job. She didn't go to work. She just sat in her wheelchair and drank all day. And she was like, this is my life. This is what I do. But Ann also spent a lot of time on the internet, specifically in this spiritual Facebook community group. Ann, like Lauren, had a artistic and spiritual side to her, and she believed in things like chakras, auras, vibrations, energy transfer, etc. And Ann actually introduced her daughter Lauren to this group in 2016, and they both participated in the community. They would ask the community for advice, for healing prayers. They would ask them to send positivity and light. They would send positivity and light out to others in the group. And Lauren very much took to this group. She posted there regularly. She called the other members her brothers and sisters, and she expressed her interest in learning how to read tarot cards. In 2018, when Ann was hospitalized for sepsis poisoning, she asked for thoughts and prayers from the Facebook community, the spiritual one, and she received them. Again, not long after, when her boyfriend Victor got sick, Ann posted about it and received thoughts and prayers. But when her daughter Lauren went missing, Ann did not post about it. She didn't ask for the community, which Lauren had actually been a part of, to channel their collective energy and positive vibes to help Lauren wherever she was. That is strange. Now, this was stated on the Complicit podcast, and they have access to this spiritual Facebook group, so they would know. And I guess that somebody else did post about Lauren being missing at a later time, and Ann sort of contributed to that thread, but Ann did not make her own post about her daughter, who was a part of that same community, being missing. And Lauren's last post in this Facebook group was 8 days before she went missing. And she posted this on June 11th, 2020. And in my opinion, it's definitely concerning, and it's definitely reflective of, having a potentially intense mental health episode. So Lauren wrote, quote, "Does anyone feel like there's a real battle between good and evil right now? I feel like I'm finally having my awakening. I've been meditating and speaking to my higher self lately. I believe it's as though I'm on my own frequency, and I believe in energy and the power of love and light. I feel like we have to gather together and keep the balance. There's something bigger going on. I feel it deep within." End quote. Now, here's a very weird connection between Lauren's case and another case we covered a few years back. And this was the case of 21-year-old Layla Cavett, who was last seen on July 25th, 2020 in Hollywood, Florida. Surveillance footage captured Layla at a gas station with her 2-year-old son, Camden. Witnesses reported seeing her at other locations in that area earlier that day, and Layla had traveled from Georgia to Florida, and it was unclear why, since she didn't have any known ties to the Florida area. But on the morning of July 26th, Layla's son, Camden, was found wandering barefoot and wearing only a diaper in Miramar. Layla's white Chevy Silverado was found in Hollywood, Florida, in a Walmart parking lot, and although law enforcement found no signs of foul play, Layla's wallet and other personal items were missing along with her. A person of interest very quickly emerged in the case, mainly because this dumbass posted a Facebook video talking about how he hadn't done anything wrong before anybody even really knew he existed. And this guy was named Shannon DeMar Ryan. He was a self-proclaimed witch doctor and spiritual guru who claimed he had met Layla and her son at the gas station and that they were planning to do business together. He told investigators that Layla had left from the gas station with strangers. But obviously he's lying, right? He's lying about everything. His statements were inconsistent. He was later arrested. He was charged with Layla's disappearance and later charged with her murder. Surveillance footage showed Ryan buying odor eliminating and cleaning products and disposing of trash bags around the time of Layla's disappearance. Also, his timeline of the gas station saying Layla left with strange people. They pulled that video footage, obviously, and it was not consistent with his story. Police also found evidence that Shannon Ryan had searched online for ways to make chloroform and had deleted incriminating videos from his phone. Despite extensive searches, Layla Cavett has never been found, and her fate remains unknown. But here's the thing. Shannon Ryan was a part of the Facebook group that Lauren Dumolo had joined in 2016. And there reportedly are 3 women who were a part of that group that turned up missing. 2 of them were from Florida, and all of them, including Lauren, followed Shannon DeMar Ryan on Facebook. And remember I said that Lauren had expressed interest in learning to read tarot cards, and Shannon Ryan just so happened to make money on the side by teaching people how to be a witch and how to read tarot cards, right? Not a great kind of correlation here, but as of August 16th, 2020, Shannon Ryan was in FBI custody, but a few months before was when Lauren went missing in June of that same year. And at that time, Shannon DeMar Ryan was out walking them Florida streets, and he hadn't even encountered Layla Cavett yet. Now, according to the FBI, Layla did leave Georgia after communicating with Shannon Ryan online and agreeing to be his apprentice, and the authorities believe that she is obviously no longer alive and that he's responsible for her death. And it was a financial motive. He wanted to rob her. Whatever his motive was, it doesn't matter. This guy was an absolute clown. I'm glad he's in prison, but this has become a potential theory of what could have happened to Lauren Dumolo. Was she communicating with Shannon Ryan on Facebook? Did she ask him if, he could teach her how to read tarot cards? Because this was something she was interested in. Did they end up meeting, and did Lauren Dumolo end up going missing just like Layla Cavett would a few months later? It's a potential theory, like I said. So on July 8th, 2020, Cassie and her father, Paul, ended up moving everything out of Lauren's apartment. Gabriel Pena had jumped ship already. It's likely that he had not returned since the day he popped in to get his television. And reportedly, a few days before he had stopped to get his television, he'd given his key to Lauren's apartment to Victor and told him that he was done. Now, by this point, it had been several weeks since Lauren had vanished, and Gabriel Pena had been very quiet, not speaking to the media at all. But on July 10th, he broke his silence in an interview with Wink News. In that interview, Gabriel said, quote, "I don't think she left on her own because she would have taken at least some clothes or her toothbrush or her makeup," end quote. Gabriel said he was worried. He simply wanted Lauren to come home, and he told the media outlet that he had taken and passed a polygraph, a claim that is worth noting Cape Coral police have not confirmed, to my knowledge. They have not confirmed that he took or passed a polygraph. Then Gabriel went on to say something that I think is weird, but it could be a language barrier. Obviously, English is not this person's first language. It could be a language barrier issue. But he said, quote, I'm worried. I'm worried and scared. Not scared because I didn't do anything, but I'm just worried something really did happen, end quote. Not scared because I didn't do anything. It's it's a suspicious remark because it's a protective, defensive remark. He's like, I'm really scared. And he's like, but I'm not scared because I didn't do anything. I'm not scared because I did something to her. I'm not scared because I'm responsible. I'm not scared of like getting in trouble with the law. I'm just scared because I'm worried something really did happen to her. And that's valid, right? And maybe he's just over explaining himself because he knows that as the significant other, as the last person who saw her, he's going to be high on the suspect list, right? The boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife of any person who's missing or turns up murdered is always going to be like the number one suspect. Plus, allegedly, he was the last person to see her alive. So there's going to be a lot of suspicion surrounding him. So maybe he was sort of like over-explaining. He didn't want his words to be misconstrued or taken out of context. I'm not sure. But Gabriel did have a theory about why Lauren was missing. He said that he believed she'd left the apartment, she'd gone out with one of her friends, and then, quote, her friend got her all messed up on drugs, and I don't know what after that, end quote. Now, in this article, we also heard from Trish Root with Crime Stoppers, who revealed that the police had basically told her that Lauren hadn't been using her credit or debit cards. Lauren, didn't appear to have taken any large sums of money out of the bank. She didn't pick up her last paycheck, so if she needed money and didn't want to be tracked by using credit or debit cards, she could have at least picked up her paycheck, cashed it, and then gotten by for a few days with cash. But Lauren hadn't been doing that. So if she was alive, if she was unharmed, then how was she surviving? How was she eating? Where was she staying? Etc. And Trish from Crime Stoppers said, listen, every hour that passes, every day that passes, it's less and less likely that we're going to figure out what happened here. Like, time is of the essence. Now, July 14th, 2020 would have been Lauren's 30th birthday. At that point, she'd been missing for 25 days. The following day, People magazine featured Lauren's story in a spread that had other missing people stories, and the public continued to demand answers from the Cape Coral police. 5 days later, on July 20th, law enforcement descended on Four Freedoms Park again, but this time with cadaver dogs. Now, the dogs and their handlers came from Peace and River Search and Rescue, and the dogs searched the park, they searched the woods next to the park, as well as along the water. But one of the dogs seemed to pick up a scent pretty quickly. And Detective Nick Jones, the lead detective on this, he said it was chilling what happened because this dog didn't lead her handler to any location in the park. She ran across the street and alerted at one of the apartments. Now, this apartment happened to belong to the mother of Lauren Dumolo. The dog alerted to a maroon work van parked under the carport outside the apartment. It alerted to the apartment and to an item inside the apartment, as well as 2 portable storage units behind the apartment complex. Inside the apartment, police collected a shower curtain and a rod, and this shower curtain was hung up in the apartment to separate the washer and dryer area from the rest of the apartment. It's sort of like a makeshift door. Now, the work van, it just so happened to be the van that Gabriel and Victor drove to work each morning, and that was also taken by police. An analysis was performed on both the shower curtain as well as the van, and the Complicit podcast reported that Detective Nick Jones had told Lauren's father, Paul, and her sister, Cassie, that the dogs had alerted to that shower curtain inside the apartment because they were picking up on methane gas that was on the shower curtain. And this is inaccurate. Just basically, if you know anything about cadaver dogs, even me, before I heard further elaboration, I knew the dogs couldn't have picked up on methane gas. And the Complicit podcast actually invited the president of Peace River Search and Rescue, Michael Hadsill, to talk about this on the podcast. And he said, no, methane is not one of the primary gases that cadaver dogs smell because it is colorless and odorless. And I did get like a very intense education on cadaver dogs and what they can smell and what they can't smell and how they work during the whole Casey Anthony thing, because that was a big part of that case. So obviously I'm no expert in cadaver dogs, but like I said, I think last week on Crime Weekly, I do hyperfixate on things and I try to learn as much as possible. And I know a good deal about cadaver dogs because when a person dies, bacteria breaks down the body's tissues and the cells, and this does release gases like methane in a process that's known as putrefaction. Now, human bodies decompose in 5 stages. Each of these stages is going to produce different odors. In fact, a study done at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory showed that the human body makes and releases 424 different chemicals as it decomposes. The first stage of human decomposition, which is what we're going to focus on, this happens between 0 and 2 days after death. And this is when the cells begin to break down due to a lack of oxygen, and enzymes in the cells digest cellular structures. Basically, the body's like digesting itself. And cadaver dogs are trained to recognize something called volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. And these VOCs are associated with human decomposition. The 2 chemicals that these cadaver dogs are trained with are called putrescine and cadaverine. They're produced during the breakdown of amino acids in decaying tissues, and it's during that first stage of decomposition that the body releases putrescine and cadaverine. So while methane gas is released during decomposition, it is odorless to humans. It does not provide a distinct scent profile for cadaver dogs to recognize, and cadaver dogs are not trained during the process of their intensive training to recognize methane gas. Methane can also occur naturally in various environments, so targeting it in a cadaver dog search is kind of pointless. It could lead to a ton of false positives, muddy the water. It's not something that they do. So why would Detective Jones tell Lauren's family that this was what the dogs had picked up on that shower curtain? Methane could have been present on that shower curtain for various reasons, but it would not have drawn in a highly trained cadaver dog from across the street. It wouldn't have. So let's talk about the work van, which was taken by police after the dogs alerted to it. According to the Complicit podcast, the van was released back to Victor within a week, and Detective Jones had told Lauren's family that the police believed, the dogs had alerted to the van because of Victor and Gabriel's line of work, which was taking out old flooring and putting in new flooring. The dogs could have picked up on multiple things, such as blood or feces that had been on old flooring, which would have been taken away in that work van. They could have even picked up on, potentially, yes, cadaver smells, because maybe in these places where these floors are being removed, somebody did die at one point. So the dogs could be picking up on the residual of that. So essentially, sometimes things are in houses, and maybe even houses where people have passed away, and those things had transferred to the work van from the houses, and the dogs were confused because they don't hit on certain scents. They just follow the scent of chemicals that the body releases at the time of death. And if you were taking out an old flooring to replace it with a new one, usually you'd put the old flooring in the van and tow it away to like a dump or something. But Mike Hadsell, who was the president of the search and rescue company with the cadaver dogs, he said the dogs did alert on the van. It was impounded. They took everything out of it, and the dogs worked on it, worked on the things they took out, and then worked on the van when the things were all removed. And he said they did find some stuff that wasn't just like written off by, oh, they do flooring work. But he said he wasn't allowed to reveal these things at that time because of the current and active investigation. But Lauren's Aunt Sue claims that she talked to Nadia, who was the handler of the dog that alerted to the work van, and Nadia allegedly claimed that Lauren's DNA was found in the front and the middle of the van. But the dog, the cadaver dog that led her to this van, that dog laid down in the back right-hand corner of the van. And Nadia said that when cadaver dogs lay down like this and they stay, they don't move, they don't continue searching or sniffing, that dog is positive that the chemicals associated with human decomposition are present. So this is interesting. And remember, I said there was like 2 kind of portable storage units at the back of the apartment complex. I guess those were searched and the police said those were cleared. But listen, I don't know if I believe the police right now in this case. I don't know if they're purposely keeping things close to the vest so that they don't let, whoever potentially hurt Lauren know by releasing these things to the media that they have evidence. But the fact that Detective Nick Jones said the dogs had picked up on methane gas on that shower curtain is very concerning, because cadaver dogs don't do that. It's just, I don't know if he was confused, if it was miscommunicated. I don't know. But that is wrong. That is incorrect. A few years after this, in 2023, NBC2, which is a local NBC affiliate in Cape Coral, they reached out to Victor and spoke to him over the phone. And he told them he didn't know why the cadaver dogs had hit on his van or apartment, but he said Gabriel had nothing to do with Lauren's disappearance, and Victor, believed that Lauren was running with the wrong crowd, making her disappearance potentially drug-related. I hate when people do this, by the way, because if somebody has a drug problem at any time in their life and then they go missing, a lot of people will automatically attribute it to the drug problem they had. But we do know, based on drug tests, that Lauren was clean, at least when she had taken, drug tests that same month. Maybe, I don't know what could have happened the day of. I don't know if she relapsed after that, but she had been clean for several years. So to just sort of write it off as in, oh, it's probably drug related because she disappeared and none of us did anything, it's a little, it's kind of jumping the gun. It's eliminating any other possible theories or, honestly, real issues with Lauren's disappearance, which could have been, and I believe definitely was, related to foul play. Because if Lauren was just going to go off with her friends and do drugs, why wouldn't she have brought her phone? Why wouldn't she have brought her phone? I don't understand. So the day of the search at the apartment with the cadaver dogs, Lauren's mother, Ann, posted on Facebook, and she posted, quote, "What an eventful day. The police came to my house with canines and said, we're here to search for a body. They searched my house, did several swabs. They said we're cleared. Still no word on Lauren," end quote. Yeah, what an eventful day. What a weird Facebook post. They said they're looking for a body. I'm sure that the police didn't just knock on your door and she's like, "Hello, what are you here for?" And they're like, "Get out of our way, lady, we're looking for a body." But okay. And according to the Complicit podcast, much like Gabriel Pena's claims that he had taken a polygraph and passed it, Ann's claims that they'd been cleared by the police were never actually confirmed by any law enforcement personnel. And just looking at the timeline, they went in the house with the cadaver dogs, or the apartment with the cadaver dogs, and then that night she's posting on Facebook that the police have cleared her. They wouldn't have cleared her by then. They wouldn't have cleared anything by then. They took the work van. They took the shower curtain. They hadn't performed forensics on that yet. The analysis on these things hadn't come back yet. So it's highly unlikely that the police would have told you, "You're cleared." They probably just would have been like, "All right, we're done. We're taking our dogs and going." They wouldn't have been like, "You're cleared, all good. No issues here, ma'am. Sorry for the intrusion." Definitely does not work with the timeline. Now, here's another weird thing. After the maroon work van was returned to Victor and Gabriel, they reportedly went to their boss, a man named Oscar, who owned the flooring company that they worked for, and they requested or demanded a new work van, and Oscar said no, and this allegedly led to an argument. On July 28th, 2020, just a few days after this argument, this altercation, Oscar was found dead, hanging in a hotel room. Now, the police claimed, allegedly, that he had taken his own life because he was going through a divorce. But Lauren's father, Paul Dumolo, believes otherwise. Paul said, "Listen, this Oscar guy, he was 72 years old. He'd been going through a divorce for a while. It wasn't really cramping his style. He definitely wasn't devastated about it. In fact, the morning that he died, Oscar had plans to go fishing with his buddies. He was actually bringing the bait. They were all waiting for him at the dock, but he never showed up because he was dead in a hotel room." So yes, there's some implication, at least from Lauren's family members, that potentially Gabriel and Victor wanted to get rid of this work van now that they knew the police had, accessed it and had looked through it, and maybe it was sort of on their radar. They wanted to get rid of it, get a new work van, and their boss was like, no, for whatever reason, and maybe, Victor and Gabriel pushed it, and maybe this boss guy, he was like, oh, is this because of Lauren? Or maybe he said something, or maybe he knew something, and then he turns up dead. So there's definitely an implication that possibly Gabriel and Victor or Gabriel or Victor had something to do with this mysterious death. I'm not saying that they did, obviously. I'm just saying it's another facet of this that seems weird. It just seems weird. It seems like the timing is weird. And obviously this has been sort of explored by Lauren's family, specifically her father, Paul, who had also begun doing some investigation on his own, right? He was going around and talking to people where Lauren would hang out or where she worked. And apparently, Lauren had once worked at a Taco Bell in Fort Myers, and Gabriel had gotten her the job there because Gabriel's cousin was married to the manager, Luis. Now, there's a few things about this Taco Bell that seem off. Firstly, there appeared to be a male customer who would hang around there when Lauren was on shift, and he was into her. He tried to flirt with her. He'd sit there and watch her from a distance, even though he'd been told multiple times by Lauren and Luis that she was in a relationship and to cut it out. Now, after Lauren went missing, but before her disappearance was publicly reported, this customer reportedly stopped going into that Taco Bell, almost like he knew Lauren wasn't going to be there anymore. Reportedly, the police did track this man down, according to Detective Nick Jones. They talked to him, and he cooperated with law enforcement. He even gave them his phone. I don't think he gave them his phone for them to analyze, but he showed it to them. And Lauren's family says that Detective Nick Jones told them, I didn't get vibes from this guy, so we're not going to consider him a person of interest. Now, Paul Dumolo looked into the guy himself, and he found that he'd been convicted for prostitution and human trafficking in Miami. Additionally, Paul found out that the manager of the Fort Myers Taco Bell, where Lauren worked, had also worked at 3 different Taco Bells in the area. And at 2 out of these 3 Taco Bells, 2 of Luis's employees had been arrested for human trafficking, and at a 3rd, a girl had been abducted, beaten, and basically assaulted under a bridge. Now, I looked into this myself, and here's what I found. November 5th, 2019, 2 people were arrested for human trafficking in 2017, and they are now being sentenced in 2019. The case took place at a Cape Coral Taco Bell where the woman would identify victims through her job managing the fast food restaurant. The couple targeted teenage girls whom the woman would introduce to the man. Reports indicate that the couple would tell the girls that they could make a lot of money as a way to lure them in. The couple abducted one girl and drove her to a location under a bridge where they sexually assaulted her. I hate that we say sexually assaulted. They raped her. The man raped her, okay? In another instance, they threatened this girl with a gun before robbing her of $2,000. Now, the perpetrators in this case were named Layla Fuosi, and the man that she lured these young girls to, he was in his 30s. So Layla was 19. This man that she was working with, Daryl Walker, was in his 30s. Now, after they assaulted their 17-year-old victim under that bridge, they returned to the car, and they said they were going to drive her home. And Daryl Walker told the girl that she'd passed the test. She'd proved her loyalty, and now she needed to remain loyal. And reportedly, Walker told this girl, quote, this is like a movie. We are a mafia. You can bring the police, you can bring the FBI, the CIA, and they're not going to stop me. You already did this. Now you got to be down. End quote. Daryl Walker also pulled over on the way back to driving this girl to her house. He pulled out a gun and he said he was going to kill her father before he brought her to some bushes and raped her again. And then he, at gunpoint, was like, give me your money. And she was like, I don't have any cash. I only have my debit card. And then he took her debit card from her. So this is another potential theory, that Lauren had maybe run into someone like this at her job in Taco Bell. Maybe she'd become a victim. And I don't know if I mentioned it in part 1, but remember that when Gabriel had told Paul Dumolo that Lauren was missing, and Paul was like, well, have you looked for her? Gabriel told Paul, yeah, I've looked everywhere for Lauren. And he, according to Paul, said he'd even looked under the bridge. And so obviously Paul hears this story about the Taco Bell employees, the assault, the bridge, and he wonders if the bridge is the same bridge that this 17-year-old victim was brought to. And it is clear to me that Paul Dumolo believes that Lauren's boyfriend, Gabriel Pena, is possibly connected to her disappearance, and that Gabriel knows more than he is saying. It is clear to me based on a lot of context, but also in a few articles, Paul Dumolo has straight out said, like, Gabriel did this. Gabriel knows something. So the following August in 2020, Gabriel once again spoke to the media, but his tone was a bit different than his previous interview with Wink News from July.
I love her very much, more than anything in the world, you know.
We just want her to come home.
After 7 weeks of strenuous searching, lead detective Nick Jones says they have interviewed many people, including Lauren's boyfriend, Gabriel Pena.
Do you think that her boyfriend had anything to do with her disappearance?
I can't answer that.
Pena was the last person to see Lauren the day she vanished on June 19th. Her purse, phone, and everything in it was left behind. Lauren's family says she always had her phone with her.
So why she left her phone behind, I have a problem with that.
They say the phone was last used in Lauren's apartment on June 19th. It was a call to Pena, but he didn't answer. Pena claims he never heard from her.
When I was calling her to ask her for something and she wasn't picking up and she wasn't calling me, I was like, something's weird.
The week before Lauren disappeared, her sister Cassie helped her pay rent.
Somebody that's going to run away or hurt themselves are not going to go pay a bill.
And the day before she disappeared, Lauren's family says she was seen on surveillance cameras of businesses near the park applying to jobs. Then she vanished.
Nowadays, there's cameras everywhere, and she's not on anything.
Family says she would not willingly leave her almost 6-year-old daughter behind.
She loves her daughter more than anything in the world.
Michaela is her whole life.
Now, 49 days later, they wonder what happened to her.
Either she got into an argument with somebody or somebody tried, maybe sexually abuse her or something or try to take her, and she was murdered. That's my belief.
Pena filed a missing persons report for Lauren on June 21st, but because of an error in the report, detectives didn't start working the case until 5 days after her disappearance, something Pena has nothing to do with.
And not to be able to hear her voice, the fear is just hurt.
On July 2nd, Lauren's shirt was found at Four Freedoms Park, buried in the sand. That is the last piece of evidence the family knows of.
There isn't any one person that I would rule out right now.
Detectives say this is still a missing persons case, but they are looking into any and all possibilities, even if that means Lauren is dead.
Mentally, we have prepared for the worst because that's what time tells us to do.
I won't be done until I find Lauren.
Gabriel told NBC2 that he didn't know anything, but he wondered if maybe Lauren was looking for an apartment to get out of the area they were living in. He said, quote, "So I was thinking she was looking for an apartment around and maybe someone took advantage of her and that was it and never came back," end quote. It's a weird theory. Like, it's a really weird theory. Why was she looking for an apartment? She was where they were located was a fine place. She was close, within walking distance to her mom's apartment, Four Freedoms Park, where she went every morning. She had just paid the rent. And yeah, we have this, I guess, statement by a maintenance man that he had talked to Lauren on the 18th and she was looking for a new apartment. But I'm going to be honest with you, I don't believe it. And you're going to see why a little bit later. But also in this interview, Gabriel made a radically different statement than he had before in his July interview. He said that Lauren was not using drugs. And remember, his theory when he was talked to by Wink News in July was that her friend had, taken her out of the house, got her messed up on drugs, and he doesn't know what happened after that. Another odd thing happened on July 30th, 2020, when Victor told Lauren's brother Jeffrey that he'd received a strange text from an unknown number, and the text included a picture that had been taken from Lauren's Facebook page. This picture was from Mother's Day 2019, and the picture that Victor claimed he'd received in a text showed Lauren, Lauren's daughter, and Lauren's sister Lindsay, but the original photograph actually contained Lauren's mother, Anne. She had just been cropped out of the copy that Victor had been allegedly texted. But the Complicit podcast said this number was looked up and, the number that allegedly sent the text in the picture, and it wasn't a real number. It was probably like a Google Voice number or something. And Lauren's sisters insist that Victor sent this picture to himself, whether he used this fake number, because they could clearly see that the text wasn't received. It was sent by Victor to Victor. And Victor had showed this picture to Jeffrey, Lauren's brother, and he was like, "I'm concerned. Like, is this a threat? Are we being threatened?" And Jeffrey reportedly was also very worried. And so he showed the picture to his mother, Anne, later, but he said she just laughed about it. She laughed at the picture. She laughed at his concern. So that's weird. Months passed, and community searches and fundraisers continued on with no new leads resulting. On November 6th, 2020, Lauren's family members enlisted the help of private investigator Walter Zelisko of the Global Investigative Group. Zelisko has quite the resume in law enforcement with a combined 48 years of experience. He served as a detective, he served as a chief of police, he served as a county undersheriff, he's worked for the government in the private sector. He's got a lot of experience. And in May of 2022, Florida Weekly interviewed Walt, and he expressed his disappointment at the way Lauren's case had been officially investigated by Cape Coral law enforcement. And he said, quote, "It's frustrating that the police haven't been able to identify even a person of interest, never mind suspects. I think they've made some missteps from the initial stages of the investigation. Whenever you have a missing person case, you look at the immediate events that transpire. Is there a red flag or something that can make it look like a crime and not just a missing person?" End quote. Well, Walt says there were plenty of red flags, tons of red flags, giving the example of Lauren's shirt being found at the park like a week after she went missing.
That area was thoroughly searched days before, and the shirt just turns up right there on the sand.
That clue perplexes private investigator Walt Zelisko, questioning whether or not the shirt was planted and the crime scene is actually somewhere else. Planted or not, he says the detectives on this case have a lot to work with.
What they have to look at the shirt to see if there was any tears. Was it forcefully removed from her?
Or was there blood on it? Cape Coral Police says divers have searched for Dumolo in the water near the park, not yielding much more evidence. Insurance route with Southwest Florida Crime Stopper says they haven't received a lot of tips on her disappearance either.
But that doesn't mean that the information's not out there, because it absolutely is.
Walter Zelisko got involved with the case because he claims the public is generally hesitant in speaking with police, but he personally has some informants on the street who have raised his suspicions about a few of Lauren's associates in Cape Coral. He said his informants believe that Lauren was involved with some people who solve problems by dumping them 50 miles out into the Gulf of Mexico. So once again, we got to put a pin in that because we're sort of going to return to it. But basically, what Walt Zelisko is saying is that maybe some people Lauren was hanging out with were, kind of walking on the darker side of life. Maybe they were into drugs. Maybe they were criminals, like the guy that she was sort of having a relationship with when she was on again, off again with Gabriel Pena. We know that guy basically ran a drug house where everybody went to his house and got high and used drugs, and a girl overdosed at his house or his apartment, and he and his friends wrapped her up in like a rug and put her on the side of the road instead of trying to get her help because they didn't want to get in trouble for her overdosing at their home with the drugs that they most likely had provided. So these are the kind of people that Walt Zelisko specifically is referring to. People like that guy, Carl Crow, who has a criminal record, doesn't do things on the up and up, and maybe Lauren did relapse, maybe she overdosed, maybe something happened and she was killed accidentally or intentionally, and they just got rid of her body, which is why she hasn't been found. But now let's fast forward to 2023, when accused murderer Wade Wilson spoke out from behind bars, and somehow Lauren Dumolo became connected to this. And not connected as in Wade Wilson was responsible for her death because he was arrested in 2019 before Lauren went missing. But apparently Wade Wilson knows something about this greater conspiracy and corruption in the Cape Coral area that could have something to do with what happened to Lauren. So if you're not familiar with the Wade Wilson case, he just went to trial not long ago, so it was a very popular case and everyone was talking about it, but I'll give you a quick breakdown. On October 7th, 2019, Wilson murdered 2 women within just a few hours. He strangled Christine Melton in her home shortly after meeting her at a bar, and then he strangled Diane Ruiz after luring her into his car and before running her over with his car multiple times. Wilson, for some reason, confessed this to his father, Stephen Testaseca, who then contacted the police, leading to Wilson's arrest. Now, in June of 2024, Wade Wilson was found guilty of first-degree murder in both killings. He was sentenced to life in prison. times two. But in 2023, he was still awaiting his trial, and this is when he made some bizarre claims. During an interview with NBC2, Wilson proclaimed his innocence and stated that he had been forced and coerced into making a false confession.
Did you kill Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
We wasted no time getting straight to the point. For a man potentially facing death, Wade Wilson had a lot to say. His appearance today is much more sinister than some of his early court hearings when he was first charged with murder more than 3 years ago.
I'm not a monster. Yeah, I'm not a saint either by any means. I've made bad decisions in the past, of course.
He admits he met Christine Melton at a bar during a night of drinking and spent the night at her Cape Coral home. But he claims he left the next morning and she was alive.
Even your own father testified that you called him saying you met Melton at a bar, you spent the night together, you went back to her house, and you didn't know why, but you choked her, rolled her up in a carpet. How do you explain that?
Right. You know, those things that were said to my father, they were said by me. Of course, they were false too.
Cape Coral police say while driving Melton's car, Wilson picked up mother of two Diane Ruiz, choked her, and ran her over multiple times. As for the confessions to his father,
I was forced. It wasn't a call that I willingly wanted to make.
Wilson claims it's all part of a conspiracy being covered up, one that he's trying to expose. He says he was recruited from Key West to be part of a crime organization in Lee County.
That we were doing from Key West to Fort Myers, including the human trafficking, including, various other things, prostitution with the women, drug trafficking. And things.
Wilson says some of the prostitution was happening at a local spa, and he can prove there was nefarious activity happening there.
What's the proof?
Cell phone records will show, text messages will prove, and these are things that my lawyers already have.
When I called Wilson's lawyer, he wouldn't answer any of my questions. I'm not sharing the name or location of the spa. Wilson claims Lauren Dumolo worked there, Cape Coral's most well-known missing persons case. She hasn't been seen since 2020. Wilson says high-profile people use that spa, and some of the people involved in the alleged crime ring are testifying against him in his murder trial.
I am the loose end that is so easily just X'd out.
Talking with Wilson, it really does appear like he's trying to curry favor and save his own life. He talked a lot about former Lee County Sheriff Mike Scott. I talked with Scott on the phone. He told me Wilson's allegations are outlandish and not true. So now let's talk about that alleged crime ring. Fort Myers police told me they haven't found anything regarding human trafficking. Cape Coral police said the Lee County Sheriff's Office and the state attorney's office are aware of his claims, but they're not looking into it because it didn't happen within their jurisdiction. LCSO said they couldn't answer my questions, and same with the state attorney's office. And as far as Wilson's claims about Lauren Dumolo, Cape Coral police said they don't think there's any connection between the two because Wilson was locked up before Dumolo disappeared.
Wade Wilson claimed that Lauren Dumolo had ties to this spa, where people involved in this alleged crime ring would often frequent. And he also mentioned former Lee County Sheriff Mike Scott multiple times and claimed that Scott was part of certain cover-ups. Now, there does appear to be some evidence of corruption in Lee County, Florida. In fact, there's an entire Facebook group dedicated to it. Just 3 months ago, the current Lee County Sheriff, Carmine Marceno, was accused of laundering money and misappropriating funds.
A secret grand jury is meeting in Tampa for the second day now, hearing evidence the FBI has gathered in its investigation against Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marceno. NBC2's Dave Elias, who has led our coverage of this big story, joins me tonight with the very latest.
Yeah, Christy, the grand jury actually began meeting on Tuesday. Now, because this is a secret grand jury, it's nearly impossible to know exactly what is taking place. Tonight, though, a closer look of how we got here.
our deputy fearing for her life and safety.
For most of 2018, Lee County Under Sheriff Carmine Marcino was the face of the department after family responsibilities pulled then Sheriff Mike Scott away from the job. Scott revealing to me exclusively back then who he was recommending for the job.
It's my recommendation to the governor that Carmine Marcino be appointed.
Then Governor Rick Scott did exactly that, Marcino recalling the day.
And my phone rang, and it was Governor Rick Scott.
On October 1st, 2018, I and hundreds of people, including deputies, watched Marcino's swearing in. Afterwards, I asked the sheriff,
will you run for the office?
Absolutely, absolutely.
He did run in 2020, and he won with 67% of the vote, despite allegations of discrepancies in his work history. After his win, Marcino began to become a much more visible sheriff.
You will end up at the Marcino Motel.
Nailing down signs in the yards of those arrested on drug charges, his TikTok posts began garnering attention with more than 1 million followers.
That deadly force behavior gets you a job for the medical examiner or 6 feet under in a casket.
In 2022, days after the Uvalde school shooting, Marcino posted the arrest of a 10-year-old Cape Coral boy over an alleged threat. It got global attention. He posted this on TikTok.
We're not waiting 1 second. We are going to kill you because you can't kill evil enough.
Despite the negative attention, the sheriff wasn't backing down, telling me,
there are some parents who've said you're being too tough.
As your sheriff, I want to be firm with a zero tolerance.
As the sheriff approached the 2024 election, controversy again blew up. His opponent, Mike Hollow, announcing that Marcino was the target of an FBI investigation.
Eventually, Mr. Romano and I sat down with the FBI in May of this year, May 21st of 2024.
Contract employee Ken Romano claimed in an audio recording that he was hired by Marcino in a money laundering scheme.
Taxpayer dollars. Officer's like, yeah. I said, that's crazy. How did you just involve me in a crime?
The former sheriff Mike Scott calling the claims serious allegations and saying the sheriff should address them. However, Marcino has never answered any questions about the claims.
The whole Carmine thing, it actually goes pretty deep. There's there's a lot to it. This dude was certainly doing things he shouldn't have. That's not what this video is about. I don't want to kind of stray off the path too much, but I am a firm believer that if we looked close enough at anyone in a position of power, we would find something unsavory. It's not like they all aren't doing it. Most of them are just not getting caught, and most of them never do get caught. But this lack of trust in law enforcement, it does add a layer of credibility to Wilson's allegations, which, to be fair and to be completely transparent, I believe were probably made out of self-preservation and to distract from the real issue, which were his horrible crimes. But if you look at Lauren Dumolo's case, you might wonder, why has there been no progress made, right? No persons of interest named, no new information or details being shared with the public as far as what forensics have been found, whether the forensics were found on Lauren's phone, Gabriel's alibi, the work van analysis, etc. Nothing. Now, the police did pull surveillance from Four Freedoms Park to see how Lauren's purse and shoes and shirt had ended up there, but they claimed to have seen nothing in this footage, or nothing of evidentiary value, which is really difficult to believe. But they also refuse to let Lauren's family view this footage to see that for themselves, which I think is suspicious, right? Because it's a public surveillance, there's no privacy concerns here. Why wouldn't you let her family see, especially when they're super suspicious of you, and you're telling them that you have seen nothing of evidentiary value on these surveillance videos, which are pointing at the areas of the park where Lauren's belongings were found? Because remember, Lauren's family believes that these things were planted, and you're telling them there's nothing there. They don't believe you. What's the harm in showing them for themselves to lay it to rest? Why wouldn't you do that? Lee County in Florida has a lot of stuff going on criminally that could or could not have anything to do with Lauren, but do suggest that there are several criminal organizations at work in the area. So in October of 2024, over 50 arrests were made during Operation Trick or Tweak. I'm sorry, it's the best because it's October, like Halloween, trick or treat. But they're doing like this operation to target, drug criminals. So they called it Operation Trick or Tweak. I'm sorry, it's great. This was a multi-month-long investigation aimed at targeting criminals who Marcino claimed were poisoning their community with drugs. And during that investigation, they found out that a Lee County Sheriff's Office employee who was a warrant clerk, her name was Savannah George, she was also caught up in the operation, and she was accused of sharing confidential information. And records show that Savannah admitted to tipping someone off about when he was going to be searched and arrested in a drug bust. And she used Facebook Messenger and FaceTime to tell this guy's girlfriend to, quote, put everything up, referring to the fentanyl that this dude was selling. Now, in this operation, detectives seized 4.5 kilos of cocaine, 70 pounds of marijuana, 22 firearms, and 550 grams of fentanyl. They also seized $60,000, 4 vehicles, 2 ATVs, and a jet ski. Florida residents, especially in this area, let me know what you think about all this, because I know that when you live in this area, you're far more tuned in, you have your hand on the pulse of what's going on. Does it seem like the police in this Lee County area maybe go after certain crimes, but maybe turn a blind eye to others? Maybe they might be involved in some under the table deals with some of these criminals? Let me know what you think. I know you guys are going through it right now because you are getting snowed on quite a bit. I've never seen snow in Florida the way that you guys have it right now. Apparently, the last time it snowed in Florida like this was like 1974. So I'm sure at first you thought it was fun and novel, but now you are feeling the way we here in upstate New York feel every single year, which is completely depressed and freezing. And it's like, can the snow just stop, please? Can I see some sun, please? So let me know what you think about the snow you're getting, and also about kind of like law enforcement and what's going on in Florida, especially this Lee County area, because it seems like there's a lot of stuff. Like there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of sex trafficking, there's a lot of stuff going on. And if we go back to this spa that Wade Wilson made reference to, we only have to look at a 2019 crackdown on human trafficking that took place in Florida. I guess in June of 2017, investigators began investigating massage spas in the Florida area, and court documents repeatedly referenced human trafficking and that women working these spas had moved from an area known as a human trafficking pipeline. The law enforcement in these areas then raided spas in Naples, Sarasota, Tallahassee, and Cape Coral, but nothing ever came of it. Like they found that they were doing some bad stuff, but basically it doesn't look like arrests were made, and really a lot of these massage parlors were still allowed to operate. Of the 13 massage parlors raided, 5, including one in Cape Coral, remained open as a massage spa business, but under new ownership.
Kraft is implicated in what's being called an international human trafficking ring.
WBZ's Christina Rex is live with us in studio now with how these raids went down. Christina?
David and Lisa, it started during a routine inspection last summer when a health department official checking out the massage parlors suspected human trafficking. The investigator discovered evidence that women were living at these spas and called police. 10 spas across Florida were raided and shut down this week in a massive sex trafficking crackdown stretching from Florida to New York and China.
I mean, we followed as much as $20 million moving in and out of China.
Robert Kraft is accused of soliciting services at one of these spas, the Orchids of Asia Day Spa in Jupiter, Florida. From November 6th through November 14th, police were staked outside this Jupiter spa 24 hours a day. More than 80 men were seen going into the massage parlor, not one woman. On January 15th, police obtained a warrant to record video of what was going on inside. Over the next week, police captured video of 26 Johns having sex for money. Then spa owner Hua Zhang was placed under arrest.
When Miss Zhang was arrested, she had $22,000 cash in her purse.
2 more women, alleged to be at the center of the human trafficking ring, are also under arrest. A neighbor watched investigators search one of these homes.
Saw large stacks of money being pulled out of the safe. And then in the end, when they loaded the trucks up, there was massage tables, there was some type of yoga mats.
Investigators believe they found at least 6 victims of human trafficking.
None of this would happen if those men were not availing themselves and participating in this human misery.
Police have implicated about 200 men in this massive bust, and they say more arrests are likely.
It seems that Florida has a lot of these places, these massage spas, and it's a big problem that they're trying to target now. Just a few months ago, Lena Payne of Tampa was arrested and accused of luring women from South American countries to the United States and then basically saying, like, hey, I'll pay for you to come here and you can work at my beauty parlor, but then she would force them into prostitution when they arrived in order to repay their debts. And the women did not know that that was the work they were going to be doing when they got to the United States. Another woman, Karen McGlynn, was also arrested, and authorities say she managed Payne's Jackpots Spa in Manatee County. So a lot of people think it's just men who are into human trafficking. No, there's tons of women. The women are honestly the most nefarious ones involved in this human trafficking because they're the ones that usually lure the women into the sex trade. They are gaining the trust of these women and young girls. It's kind of like this, I'm a girl, you're a girl, you can trust me thing. And then they're handing them over to these depraved, horrendously evil criminal men, or they're just doing the prostitution themselves. I mean, this woman, Payne, who owned a few spas, including the one in Manatee County, she's being called a madam now, and I think that's far too kind a name for her. But if you do a quick Google search, you'll encounter story after story about all of these places in Florida. But does that mean that Lauren Dumolo fell victim to this, that she was involved in this in some way? I'm not sure. It is a theory. I don't believe anything Wade Wilson says. I don't believe that he's innocent. I don't believe that he's being set up for his crimes. He's 100% guilty. But he probably does know something about the Florida underworld, and he's using his knowledge of that to sort of, like I said, distract and cause reasonable doubt, honestly. And on that note, let's discuss other potential theories. So did Lauren take her own life? No, I don't believe so, because as I said, it's likely her body would have been discovered by now. Lauren did not have a car. She didn't have a driver's license. Everywhere she went on foot or by bus. Law enforcement would have revealed whether Lauren took a bus anywhere or whether her credit card was used to purchase a Lyft or an Uber. They said her credit cards have not been used. So she couldn't have gotten far, is what I'm saying. She couldn't have gone to a place where her body would be completely concealed, like someplace isolated. But that doesn't mean that she didn't leave her apartment of her own free will, either on the 18th or the 19th, and then encountered foul play afterwards. We do know, the police have been kind enough to let us know this, Lauren did communicate with someone on the evening of June 18th, 2020. And she spoke to this person on an app called Talk You. So once again, she's using these apps on Wi-Fi. And the message that she sent said, quote, "You guys coming?" End quote. Who did she send this message to? Now, it is believed that the police obviously do know who this message was intended for, who it was sent to, but they haven't revealed that information. They haven't revealed where that information led them. Like, did they talk to this person? Did this person have an alibi? Did this person explain what Lauren was saying? Because it sounds like Lauren is asking someone, and multiple someones, are you guys coming? Like, coming to pick her up, right? However, if Lauren left on the evening of June 18th, and something bad happened to her, which is kind of what this theory is saying, that whoever she messaged that night, took her from the apartment and then something bad happened to her after, whether it was the people she was messaging who did something bad to her, or maybe after she was finished hanging out with them, she was like, I'm going to walk home, and then something bad happened to her. If that's a potential theory, then how the hell did Gabriel Pena see Lauren sleeping in bed on the morning of the 19th before he left for work? This also calls into question the Facebook call Lauren's phone made to Gabriel between 10 and 11 a.m. on June 19th, a call that was unanswered. Gabriel said he never received it, But was this Lauren making the call? Or did someone who had the possession of her phone make it? And we know that Gabriel knew where her phone was. So is he guilty of something? Because did he make the call from Lauren's phone to his own Facebook so he could sort of like have an alibi? Now, the police do say that this call was made from the apartment. This call was made from the apartment. So I want to know, did Gabriel go to work that day, the 19th? Where was he working? Was he on site somewhere? How far away was this work site? Can it be confirmed and proved that he was there the entire time? If that's the case, then I would say he has nothing to do with this, because if Lauren was making calls or somebody with Lauren's phone was making calls from her apartment between 10 and 11 a.m. on the 19th, and Gabriel was an hour away or 25 minutes away or across town or in a different town altogether, then it wouldn't be possible, I guess, that he could have done something to her unless he did something to her later when he got home from work and then called her dad and claimed she was missing. Maybe Gabriel got home earlier than 10 p.m. and he and Lauren fought, and then he did something to her, and then he called Paul Dumolo to say, hey, Lauren didn't come home, to create an alibi. I don't know, man. I don't know. But either way, that whole Facebook call is a little bit odd. Why was she calling? If it wasn't Lauren making the call, who did? Now, the months leading up to Lauren's disappearance were marked with stress and chaos. The termination of her pregnancy in May, the fights and physical altercations with Gabriel, her mental health issues. Is it possible that Gabriel found out about Lauren's relationship with Carl Crow, found out that the baby she carried could have potentially been Crow's, and as time went on and tensions built, it all came to a head between Lauren and Gabriel on the evening of the 18th, or even sometime on the 19th? Did Gabriel do something to hurt Lauren? And then did he use his work van to transport her body to somewhere it would never be found? Now that would mean, technically, he would have had to have enlisted the help of Victor, who was in possession of the work van, unless Gabriel had his own set of keys to the van, and then he could have snuck the van away and brought it back before anyone noticed it was gone. He then could have planted her purse and shoes at Four Freedoms Park, where everyone knew Lauren spent a lot of time, and then walked out of the park to Victor's apartment on that Saturday that those things were found there. But I don't know. It's a very, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered in order to make these theories have more contrast and come into better focus. Now, could Carl Crow or his sketchy associates have been involved? Carl Crow was in jail at the time Lauren vanished, but there was a lot of people he knew, people who did drugs and partied at his place that Lauren could have been introduced to, and maybe because she and Gabriel were fighting and Carl Crow was in prison, she contacted these guys who Carl knew because Carl wasn't available, and she was like, hey, can we hang out, maybe do drugs, whatever, and something happened to her from there. I don't know. But there are also some connections between the maintenance man who claims he saw Lauren on the morning of the 19th. Because remember, we have Gabriel Pena, who's technically the last person to see Lauren on the morning of the 19th, kissing her goodbye before he leaves for work at 6:30 a.m. But then that maintenance man was like, oh yeah, I saw her walking back from Four Freedoms Park on the 19th around 8:30, which would put her alive after Gabriel left. Now this could be sort of like the Lacey Peterson case where Lacey walked every day in her neighborhood with her dog, so people couldn't remember whether it was the morning that she went missing that they saw her walking her dog, or the previous morning or another morning because it was such a routine. That could be what happened here, and it could be completely innocent. I do not believe that Lauren went to the park on the morning of the 19th. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't. I also am not really believing that she was sleeping in the morning when Gabriel left. I don't know why. It just feels instinctually like I don't really believe it, but I could be wrong. But let's talk about this maintenance man for a minute. And in order to talk about the maintenance man and his weird connection to everything, we've got to go back to Lauren's mother, Ann. In September of 2020, just a few months after Lauren goes missing, Lauren's mother, Ann, was hospitalized after being found unresponsive. Apparently, Ann had been locked in the bathroom of her apartment, and her son, Jeffrey, had to call 911 after he knocked on the door and she wouldn't answer. Now, it turns out that Ann had been in that bathroom since Jeffrey and Victor had left for work that morning, and he found her, Jeffrey did, when he got back from work, so she'd been in that bathroom for about 9 hours. And when they finally got in there, Anne's arms and legs were blue. She was laying in what they called the beetle position. It wasn't good. On the way to the hospital, Anne was in and out of consciousness. She seemed really out of it at times, and then at other times she knew where she was and who was with her, but then she didn't again. So Jeffrey sat with Anne in the ambulance. He sat with her in the hospital, and he claims that at some point he was talking with his mother about Lauren and her disappearance. And in her confused state, Anne responded that she knew Lauren was missing. She said she'd been with Lauren. And Jeffrey was like, what do you mean? How could you know what happened to Lauren? Do you know what happened to Lauren? And Anne replied with the name Michael. But she was out of it, right? So she was out of it. She could have just been not knowing what she was talking about. But Anne's condition worsened, and she would eventually pass away on October 15th, 2020. Her death was indirectly linked to long-term alcohol use and potentially COVID-19. But there had been a weird occurrence while Anne was still in the hospital. Reportedly, on October 3rd, they did an event called We Ride for Lauren, and this event was attracting hundreds of people. It raised thousands of dollars, and during this event, when everyone was at the park and everyone was focused on Lauren, a woman who was pretending to be Lauren's sister, Lindsay, visited Anne in the hospital, and to this day, no one knows who this woman was, what she said to Anne, or what she was doing there. But it has definitely raised suspicions about what her intention could be and what her possible connections to Lauren's disappearance could be. Because, who is this lady? Who is this lady? And once again, the police have more information about this. It's so frustrating. They probably got her on surveillance. It's a hospital. There's cameras everywhere. They've got face recognition technology. They've already figured out who this woman is. Why don't we know? Why don't we know? Now let's go back to the maintenance man. The maintenance man who claimed to technically be the last person to see Lauren on June 19th. He was also reported to be in Anne's apartment the morning she became unresponsive before she had to be hospitalized. This dude said he was in the apartment working. He didn't even know Anne was there, but then he had to use the bathroom, so he went to the bathroom, he opened the door. He said he saw Anne sitting on the toilet with her head down and her hands in her lap. And he said he asked Anne if she was okay, but she didn't respond. So this dude, he claims, well, I thought she was praying. So he leaves the bathroom. He not only closes the bathroom door, which is how he found it, right? He found it closed. He opened the door to go in. He closed the door and he locked it. He's the one that locked the door. This is crazy. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? I don't care if you think she's praying. There's no one else in this apartment but this woman sitting on a toilet, unresponsive, and you, I understand leaving the bathroom and closing the door again. Why would you lock it? That's not how you found it. She wasn't locked in when you got there. What the hell is going on here? And then before he left, apparently he wrote a note, and this note was like, hey, I'll be back tomorrow to fix the ceiling. And then he left. He left the apartment. Now, obviously, Anne's family members, Jeffrey, Victor, whoever, they found this note from this maintenance man, and Lindsay and her boyfriend Matt thought this was weird. So Matt called the company that owns the building, and he was like, hey, why was this guy in the apartment? And he found out that there'd been no work order for that maintenance man to be in the apartment. And the company didn't know why he'd been there at all. He wasn't supposed to be. And Matt was like, well, do some of these maintenance men go into apartments sometimes if, a resident just talks to them and says they need help or something? And the company was like, absolutely not. They need an official work order. We need documentation to show who was in the apartment, when they were there, etc. Obviously, for safety reasons, for a lot of legal reasons. Now, Lauren's Aunt Sue found out about this maintenance man, and she also called the company and was like, hey, can I talk to this guy? And they were like, oh, he's not around to talk to. So she searched him out. She sought him out. She wanted to talk to him herself. And I guess she kind of just went around to the different buildings that he worked on as a maintenance man, and she did locate him. And she was like, hey, I need to talk to you. And Aunt Sue claims that when she approached this maintenance man and said, I need to talk to you, he told her, oh, I thought you were here to talk about Lauren, which she thought was weird, because it's What do you really know about Lauren? Now, at first, when Aunt Sue was like, no, I'm not here to talk about Lauren. I'm here to talk about why the hell you were in my sister's apartment the day that she was like, got really sick and then she died a month later or a few months later. And then this man tried to deny that he'd been in Ann's apartment at all that day. But then Aunt Sue was like, dude, we have a note that you wrote before you left. And he suddenly remembered being there, right? He was like, oh yeah, I was there. So Aunt Sue asked the maintenance guy, why hadn't he called anyone when he'd found Ann in that state? Why hadn't he called Victor? And this dude pretended he didn't know who Victor was, and he knew very well who Victor was, okay? It's also been revealed that this maintenance man may have known Gabriel Pena because they both lived in a place called Racine, Wisconsin, as if it's like Narnia or something. They both lived in Racine, Wisconsin at the same time because Gabriel had lived in Wisconsin before he moved to Florida. They lived there at the same time, and they only lived 12 miles apart. And maintenance man, he's got a criminal record, okay? So, yeah, weird. What the hell was he doing in Ann's apartment the day she goes unresponsive and he locked her ass in the bathroom? Kind of like if something happened to her and she needed help, she wouldn't be able to get out and get help. I don't know. And this is definitely why this guy's name hasn't been revealed at this point, because there's things I want to say that legally probably wouldn't land well for anybody, and it's a good thing we don't know his name because that's sketchy. I don't believe that dude saw Lauren on the morning of the 19th, and I think it's definitely weird that he was in Ann's apartment when Ann became like so sick and unresponsive. Did he give her something? Did he do something to her? Okay, that's all. That's all I'm going to say. So at this point, the Cape Coral police have reported conducting 12 search warrants in Lauren's case. They've done 225 evidence collections. They've done 100 interviews, which doesn't actually feel like a lot, by the way, but considering all these people we've just talked about in these two videos, and considering that there's probably a ton more that law enforcement know about because all these people connect to more people, so on and so forth, 100 interviews doesn't feel like a lot. And they've also followed up on 110 tips. Apparently, this is a very odd case in the way that there's just not a lot of tips coming in. It almost feels like people know and are scared because of who might be involved. But Lauren's friends and family are still searching for her. They're still holding out hope, but they need your help. So if you have any information about Lauren Dumolo, you can call Southwest Florida Crime Stoppers at 1-800-780-TIPS. You can remain anonymous and be eligible for a reward. You can also go to Crime Stoppers online and file a report there. Tell them what you know there. Please, if you do know anything, say something, okay? Please. Paul Dumolo has said that the last he heard from the police, the case had gone cold. But he will never stop. He said, quote, "This is something no parent should have to deal with and go through. There is no closure. There's never going to. It will never be an end for me until she's either found or I'm dead," end quote. And I do have to say that I feel like the Cape Coral Police Department have not really done a great investigation in Lauren's case. There's so many questions that I personally want to know. I want to know who they've talked to. I want to know who they have as potential suspects or person of interest, because even though they haven't revealed that to us, they have to have these people. They have to know who they're interested in, right? And I need to know why there's been no movement on this. I need to know who she messaged on the 18th saying, "Are you guys coming? Or are you guys here yet?" Who did she message? That would be the first place I would start. I need to know where the hell Gabriel was on the evening of the 18th and all damn day on the 19th. I need to know that. I need to know what you saw in the surveillance cameras that were pointing at Four Freedoms Park that you considered had no evidentiary value. Because why do you get to make that call? Why do you get to make that call? I want to know a lot of things, and I'm sure you all do too, and I know for a damn fact that Lauren's family wants to know all of these things and more. And they deserve some answers. It's been almost 5 damn years at this point, okay? If it's cold, then start releasing things so that the public can help, so that we have more information and we know where to look. Let us do that. So anyways, that's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comments what you think about Lauren Dumolo's case. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video if you liked it. Share it if you think it's worth sharing. And I will be back very soon to talk with you again about another case. Thank you so much for being here. Stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe. I'll see you very, very soon.